This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Once again, joining us today is Sandra Champlain. Sandra, it is fabulous to have you back.
Thanks, Heather. Always so happy to talk with you.
Oh, it's so wonderful talking to you. And you have talked to so many near-death experiencers and other guests on your shows. You have We Don't Die Radio, and you also have Shades of the Afterlife, which you host. And so as you've talked to these guests, I know you've probably put together a pretty good picture of some of the things that they have talked to you about. So when you imagine the afterlife, what do you envision?
Well, that's a great question. I actually envision a world very similar to what we have right now. And it's been said through mediums, through trance mediums, different ways, that there's a place that we go that we're very familiar with. It feels like home. And if I can just say, I have a passion these days for feeding the birds. May sound crazy, but when COVID hit, life was pretty bleak, and I put out a couple bird feeders and had a lot of fun with it. But when I search the animal kingdom or the bird world, there's a bird that is actually all the colors of the rainbow, as if somebody did swish, swish, swish. And then, if we look at the plants and trees and animals, it's pretty miraculous. So I have this feeling for myself that there is this place, you can call it the hereafter or here before, that was there before we got here. And our world is created like that. And that there was somebody with the simple brushstrokes that created all the things that we can see. But when we pass, it's a world very similar to what we have here. We're comfortable. I think we communicate with our thoughts, though, and not voices, but that we all have bodies. We wear clothes. We all have jobs to do. We continue to learn. We continue to grow. We continue to live. We can pick whatever age we want. We can be the health we want. If we were in a wheelchair, we don't have that. If we wear glasses, we can see clearly. But I do think it's a world very, very similar to what we experience. And of course, our loved ones are there as well.
Of course, we all still have so much to learn, but you have talked to a lot of people that have also talked about God. So what is your vision in your mind of who and what God is?
Another good question. You give me the big ones here. There's something that runs through us all. There's a energy. A lot of people call it a light. There's something that makes us alive. And whatever that is that goes through us, I think we're connected to it. Someone had once described God like, if you can imagine, there are thousands of different lamps that we have, but there is only one light. So whether you call it God, the universe, higher power, whatever that is, there is, I think it's more than a being. I do. I just think maybe it's a collective, I don't know, of this unconditional love and wisdom. And I know, as you've interviewed lots of people that have had near-death experiences, they often see this light and they feel this unconditional love. So whatever that is, I think it's the thing that connects all of us, that gives us life and gives us intelligence, and that we can tap into it when we quiet our mind and become present. I believe prayer is real. I don't think it matters what you call this. God is what I use because I grew up Catholic, but it's knowing that there is this much higher consciousness, and that we're all connected to it, and that it completely loves us and we're part of it.
I think that was a really interesting analogy used about variety of lamps, but only one light. That really was a very descriptive, good way to say that. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that we humans have about God?
I think there's a sense that if there is a God, why is life so painful?
Mm-hmm.
because it's awful. That, as great as times can be in our life, it can be horrific. And anyone who watches the news, you don't even have to watch the news. We've all had things that have happened in our lives that are so devastating that you think, if there is a God, how can they let this happen? So I think for me, the way I've made peace with it all, and I've been investigating the afterlife and have just tons of reasons to believe in the afterlife for over 26 years now. I don't say this is the truth, but the way I think it for myself is that we are all these powerful spiritual beings, and there's this place called Earth that we can sign up to go. And if you can imagine heaven, we'll call it heaven, as being this great place where everything's good all the time. And as wonderful as that may be, you need negative to feel positive, right? You can't really appreciate the warmth of the sun if you don't know a cold, rainy day. So here we are as souls who want to really be the smartest and wisest. And there's this opportunity that we get to go to this place called Earth. But here's the deal. You're going to forget who you really are. You're going to forget that you're this miraculous being that can never die, that you are eternal. We're like, no big deal. Send me there. So we come here and our lives are short and there's much suffering. And I know I've hit rock bottom, but out of that rock bottom, because of that, here we are today, right? So any one of us, when we think of the hardships of our life, chances are you've learned from them, you've grown, you've been able to help other people. And if you're in that hardship right now, do the best you can, but in the future, out of it, something good will happen or you'll be able to help another person. So we play this game called life, forgetting who we really are. But that God, that being, that light has never left us and is always there for us. But part of the deal coming to earth is that there is pain and suffering. But ultimately, we can never die. We're always loved and we'll see our loved ones again and we'll return home someday and look back like, oh my gosh, so many people have had near-death experiences, as you know, feel like life was the dream. They go to a place that's so clear, much clearer than the life we're living. And it makes them think like, oh, that was just a dream. So to have that faith that that's what's happening, but like you had asked, it's people wondering if there is a God, how can all this be possible? So I'm not saying that's the truth, but I'm saying that that's my truth and it helps me live life. It helps me put things in perspective. And I'm also a firm believer that we're each in the driver's seat of our life. Now, we can't control everything that comes at us and what other people do, but we can control our reaction to them. And we can live our lives making other people wrong, or we can look and say, oh, if I hadn't driven down that road that day, and there was a tree that had come down in my path, if I had chosen another road, there would have been something else could have happened. So it's not making other people right for their actions, but just to try to get us back in the driver's seat of our life. We can each choose our next thought. We don't have to buy into our mind. We live in a mind that's not always so positive, Heather.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's the best answer I can give you to that question about God.
Well, there certainly is a lot of pain that people go through here on earth. And sometimes we're also giving out pain. And one of the things that your guests, my guests, have talked a lot about is the life review. So what are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I dig the life review. I do. I think that's a great thing. It's not a matter of someone being by our side, going through our life, saying, oh, heaven for you, hell for you. In fact, Heather, I don't believe in hell. And if there is a hell, it's right here on earth based on how tough it is. But we get to look at our own lives for a matter of soul growth. What could I have done differently? You get to experience life from the perspective of the people that you impact. And that's the good news and the bad news, because, if you cause somebody pain, you're going to feel it. You're going to experience what it was like for them. And again, not to make yourself wrong, but just to know you could have made a different choice. I do believe that in the moment, very often we do the very best thing we could. So it may not seem like we could do something else. So when we have this life review, we have an opportunity to see, what we could have done differently or in the future. But the good news is that you also get to see the impact you had on other people in the good way. So if you gave somebody a smile or whatever that may be, and you get to see the ripple effect of who they went on to become because of you. So I think the life review is a great thing. People describe it in different ways. Some people think it's like an Omnimax theater and they can see all these different screens with different things of their life, yet they experience them all in a split second. And then, they get to review it for themselves. But like I said, there's no right, there's no wrong. It just empowers us for who we are. And I think if this life review is coming, that we can all take a little moral inventory right now and make amends with people, forgive others or forgive ourselves, and then know that there is this ripple effect. So spend a little bit more time being of service to others, being kind, making a difference, sharing your love, because how great will it be to experience that ripple effect?
So you just said too that you don't believe there's a hell, but there are very credible people that say they have experienced hell. Howard Storm is one big example. So what do you think that's about?
I think, and this is again my impression, one thing I want to just say to anybody, there's a lot of people out there speaking about life, death, the afterlife. There's billions of people on planet Earth. There's going to be billions of stories. While there's similarities, I wouldn't believe anybody's got the truth.
Right.
I think we all have a moral compass. And if something makes sense to you and resonates with your values, take it on. If it doesn't, throw it away. Now, what I've chosen to believe from near-death experiences and others is that for as many billions of people are on planet Earth, we each have these different experiences. So if I were to tell someone what my life on Earth is like, they'll say, oh, that's what life on Earth is like. Well, no, that's my version of life. And when we have a near death experience, as many people very clearly can talk about things like the halls of knowledge in the afterlife and seeing their loved ones and having the life review and seeing a light and feeling unconditional love. And some hear music that is not here on earth, and some see colors that's not here. So there's a lot of commonalities, but there's also differences like we each have. And while we have a near death experience, it's not a total death experience. So I personally feel that there's a lot of our subconscious and our own fears that can be represented in those experiences. And from the negative experiences that I've talked to people about, there seems to be a commonality that it starts off negative and then maybe they get that pinprick of light and then they pray or they believe or whatever that is. And then suddenly that goes away. And then that unconditional love shows up. So I think our own humanity is still connected. And that's why there's so many different near-death experiences, but there are some commonalities to them. Does that make sense?
It does. And I really like that part that you say, nobody's got the answer, because the reason I think it's great to listen to a lot of these near-death experiences is because they each have just a puzzle piece. And you start to put the puzzle pieces together, and that's how we gain how we gain and how we shape our own beliefs about it. But yes, you don't want to listen to one person. You really want to think about all of it in its entirety and then put together your own picture. We were just talking about hell, or the lack thereof. And it is interesting that many people do feel they can cry out. So it's been interesting to hear those stories. What are your thoughts on just evil that's in the world? Does evil exist, or
Okay.
evil entities? And
I'm not going to try to change
thoughts on
anybody's
that?
beliefs, but
Okay.
I think evil can come from our own minds and our own subconscious, our own experiences. I don't think people are born evil, But I know some stories of some people that have had some really awful things that have happened to them, and they've gone on to do some awful things. I also know that there are cases that people have deficiencies in their brains, don't have a conscience, and go out to do some horrible, horrible things. I personally, in the 26 plus years I've been doing this, have never found an evil entity, negative things. I think we can create what it is, ever it is we're looking for. So I have an aunt that is as negative as they come, and negative things seem to be happening to her, right? And then there's also people like me who are speaking positively most of the time and have never had, I mean, I've had some bad things happen, don't get me wrong, and I've definitely suffered some awful things. But I look at the glass half full. So if we want to convince ourselves if something bad happens, that's because an evil entity is following us around. Like, it's so easy to give our control in our life to something else. There's a college called the Arthur Findlay College that teaches mediumship, and it's the oldest school, excuse me, that's out there from the beginning of when, maybe not the beginning, because I think people have been mediums forever, but they started teaching it early on. And also the people that are the pioneers of mediumship all were prior to that college, but it ended up coming to be. And they say that there's no evil entities, that is a man-made thing, and that when we die, there's no earthbound spirits. That's another one that a lot of people believe, that we're stuck here. You know, you tell a mom who's just lost their child that they may be stuck in an in-between zone. I mean, that's horrific. There isn't. Either we're here or we are there, and we're surrounded by loved ones. And when children pass, their loved ones are there. But for me, I never have bought into earthbound spirits, negative energies, and that's never shown up in my life. Now, if you or your listeners or somebody who are passionate about that, go wild, right? Like, also, do I believe there's life on other planets? Yeah, why not, right? We're here.
Of course.
But it's not my passion to study aliens. So you're also not going to hear me talking about that.
I often say your thoughts create your reality, which is basically what you're saying. And I do find that I've known people that are negative. Everything, they say is negative. And then it seems like they keep getting, things happening to them. And I also have seen in my own life that it's probably the times when I started to let negative things creep in there, that's when sometimes things sort of went south. And so I think you make a good point.
The flip side of that, though, Heather, is adding a little gratitude.
Yes.
I tell you, I know there's people that talk about the secret and this and that, but for you or your listeners, do an experiment sometime. Take time every day to live in gratitude, make a list of things you're grateful for, and good stuff starts happening. And you start going, Mike, is that real? Is this happening? Like, in these coincidences and synchronicities and people that you meet. And we are so much more powerful than we know. We live lives, Heather, thinking that we're living, breathing real things, but down to a quantum level. If we were scientists and we put a camera into one of the little atoms that make us up, all it would show is invisible, but there'd be nothing on it. We are invisible vibrating energy at our smallest part, which I think they're called quarks or something like that. And it's one grand illusion, and a painful one, living here on Earth. But if we start looking at life from, instead of through our own lens, but through the lens of science, not only are we invisible to our smallest piece, but we're living in this ever expanding universe, and there's nobody who can get their mind around that. So be open to there's more to us than meets the eye.
And I actually have a simple experiment for that. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but it's called the banana experiment. And so I did it with my kids when they were young, but we took 2 bananas. One we drew a little red heart on, the other we put an X on. And then we set them down, separated them. We did not touch them again. But every day we'd go up and we'd say, love you, you're beautiful. We'd do all these positive thoughts toward that banana. And then we go to the banana with the X on it and we, say nasty things. you're ugly, whatever. And the banana that we said the negative things to, which we did not touch, turned brown so much faster. And I photographed the banana as it went along the way. So that's something that folks at home can do just to show that there is energy out there that, can change things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree.
So you mentioned being a medium, but what is the difference between a psychic and a medium, and do they overlap?
They definitely overlap. Mm-hmm. We are in the midst. I have a friend, Robert Lyon is his name, production company we started called We Don't Die Films. So we are doing some pretty neat things. Our first film was about Sonia Rinaldi, who takes pictures of things like static energy, only to have faces on them. And we're not talking about vague faces. These are colorful faces, people showing themselves alive and well, younger. That's called Rinaldi. And you can find that on Amazon Prime or on my website, WeDon'tDie.com. And our next film is about evidential mediums. And I had posted on my YouTube channel this rant that I sat in the car and I looked at my camera and I could just have enough sometimes, there are good mediums and not so good mediums. There are people that think they're doing the best they can. They aren't trained very well, but a medium reading can either give people their life back again and give them that comfort that their loved one is around, or it can do more harm than good. So to answer your question, we have, we started doing online medium classes when COVID hit back in 2020, just to get people to know that this is real. You don't have to go be a medium, but just to understand how your soul communicates. Carrie McLeod and Philip Dykes, there are our tutors, the longtime mediums, their husband and wife team. They're very cute. And they're also the subjects of this upcoming documentary. The way they explain it is, as a soul, we have this communication center, and that is our psychic ability. So that is the granddaddy of them all. That is the whole pie, the whole enchilada is that psychic sense, how we perceive information from another person, whether they're alive or not, but it happens through that. And that's when we can quiet the mind. That's when we pay attention to our feelings. That's when we tap into imagination. And so in our psychic classes, and anybody interested in mediumship, you start off really getting to know how that psychic faculty works. And you do readings on people that are in Zoom rooms with you. And it's pretty cool because you can know a lot about a person. And it's fantastic. Now, where mediumship comes in, that's just a piece of that psychic pie. That is doing a psychic reading on somebody who's no longer alive. That's all mediumship is. And so when you're working with somebody, for instance, you and I looking at camera together, being on Zoom or however we record, you have that loving intent, if you're doing a psychic reading, to be able to serve that person and make a difference. So you start knowing things, you might have some advice for them. Now, when we direct that attention to somebody in the spirit world, it can be as simple as, I love Heather, who's across the screen from me. If there's a loved one that wants to relay a message to her, I'm here to do that. And so you may get an image, a feeling, a thought of somebody else. And so we teach people how to tune into that. And then you're now working with this loved one. And it's crazy because I've done these readings for people, and you actually get to feel like you are that person. There was one gentleman that I was working with, and and you have to trust what comes into your imagination as coming from the spirit world. But all of a sudden I felt tubes being put down my throat, and I felt like I was in a hospital bed. And, I'm explaining this to this gentleman, and I felt like I was afraid to die. I felt like I was holding on to this man's hand, the one I was doing the reading for. And he says, I can understand that. I can understand that. And then I got this feeling of freedom and this message that there is the afterlife and I'm fine. Please don't worry about me. And then the next thing I imagined or I saw was that I was climbing a ladder to the roof. There was a couch on the roof. How crazy. And that I was toasting this other fellow with a glass of red wine. So, I don't know what this means, but I shared it. And sure enough, he and his partner built a little rooftop patio that they would bring a bottle of wine. They put a couch up there and they'd use their ladder and they'd go up there and do the toast. So that let him know that his loved one is still with him. And so that was me having that loving intent with the individual, but yet working with his loved one who's in the spirit world and telling their story. It's an awesome experience to actually be able to play with your own psychic ability. And like I said, mediumship is just a piece of that pie. And I think that's an even cooler way to know the reality of this than just seeing a medium. And like I said, in my rant that I did on my YouTube channel, there's so many mediums out there charging so much money, and people are told some horrific things. When somebody dies, they may come in a medium reading and say, I died in a car accident, but they don't feel the pain. That's not coming back to them. There's no suffering. And there's mediums out there that tell people that their loved ones suffer or that their loved one is stuck somewhere. And, it breaks my heart. So this is why we're coming out with this documentary, to let people know what proper training is. And also, most mediums outside of America have this 10-minute guarantee. Within the first 10 minutes, if you're not feeling the connection, or maybe the medium's not, that the reading comes to an end and no money changes hands. And that's something I'm really hoping to do globally, is to have that code of ethics. But right now there's people paying $800 for a reading and they're told awful things. So there is a difference between psychic and medium, and often a medium may think they're connecting with a loved one, and what they're really doing is they're just using their psychic sense and they're telling you stuff from your memories. So there's a lot of learning that has to be done. And people think of a medium like they might think of a doctor, like, oh, it's a medium, oh, it's a doctor. But doctors go through a heck of a lot of training, not just a weekend course sometimes, and they continue to be the best they can be. And I really am a stand that if you're going to have the name medium, that you are the best that you can be.
And of course, on your shows, you do talk to mediums. You discuss the afterlife with people. You've talked to near-death experiencers. You interviewed me recently, which was wonderful. And what I love about programs like yours is I think that they do change people's lives. So how has doing these programs changed your life?
It's given me so much comfort. First of all, I went from that person that was afraid of dying. Now, I don't want to go through the death experience of any suffering, but it has been explained to me that the actual dying just feels like, when you go to bed at night and that sleep just kind of takes you over. That's what the dying experience is like. But you open your eyes and there's your loved ones, there's your pets. There could be a cheering, people doing the wave, like, oh, she crossed the finish line, you're here, you're back home. So to have that knowledge that that's waiting for me, but that my life is for a reason, that it helps me, again, be in the driver's seat of my life. I don't want to have a near-death experience to take the value of it. It helps me put things in perspective. It helps me be more of service. I've changed, not completely, but quite a bit. The little things in life, seeing nature, being with my mom, feeling love, like that's joyful for me. It used to be traveling all over the world and how much money I could make. And now it's about people. So I enjoy it. I enjoy, life can still be hard, and I have a mind just like anybody does that negativity pops in, but I now know, like, I'm the commander of my ship and I can change it. I can add a little gratitude. And if I can share with you just the latest thing that I'm most excited about.
Yes.
There's two things. One is the world of lucid dreaming. I won't get into that now. I know we talked about it, and people can go to WeDon'tDie.com and find my interview with Heather. And we talk more about the lucid dreaming. But the other thing that I wasn't so aware of is we've all heard about deathbed visions. Before somebody passes, they look up and they can see an angel or a loved one. I didn't realize that those visions can actually happen weeks or a month before somebody passes. And they're more than visions. If anybody studies Dr. Christopher Kerr. He's a hospice doctor. He has done a film and also has a book called Death is But a Dream, and studied over 1,600 hospice patients. And in their last weeks or so with dying, they call them dreams, but they are as real as day-to-day lives. So our loved ones come to join us. They let us know that we're going to go on a trip. People see them as healthy and well and much younger. And that comfort is there, that nobody dies alone. And they are every bit as clear as their loved one who's coming into the room to sit with them. You know, they'll tell stories. One of my favorite stories is a boy who died in hospice. And just before he died, he looked in the corner and he's talking to his imaginary friends and gave the name of these 3 boys that were there with him. And after he passed, you know, the family was told that the last 3 boys that were in that room, those were their 3 names. You know, they were there to take him over. There's been verifiable evidence that have come through. There's been people that I've spoken to, their loved ones have died, and they can see loved ones, and no one had ever told them that this person had died, you know, and they could see them there. And they're healthy, they're well, they're going on a trip. And it's the comfort that I feel that not only are we supported in life right now, we've got an invisible cheering squad of our own guides and our own loved ones, but that when we are closer to taking our very last breath, we will all be comforted. We'll get to see our loved ones. They might represent, you know, come as guides or angels, but loved ones, pets, and, you know, these beautiful stories that people look over somebody's shoulder and they can see into the afterlife. To me, that is, I love that. And I can never tell enough of those stories. So I think that's what I want to say.
Well, Sandra, I cannot tell you how much I have enjoyed having you here. Talk a little bit just briefly about your book, your website, and then also the programs that you host.
Absolutely. My book is titled We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. You can buy it wherever you buy books. Website is WeDon'tDie.com, and that is just home base to everything. Through that, you can find my Shades of the Afterlife. You can attend free Sunday gathering. There's little links on the top of the page there. You can take a medium class. You can go to the podcast page and you can find all 400 plus episodes of this show. You can contact me, Sandra Champlain at gmail.com. It may take me a while to get back to you because I do get hundreds of emails, but I do. In time, I will get back to absolutely everyone. I love to hear stories. But WeDon'tDie.com again, and if you go to the bottom of that page and you want to give me your email address, I promise not to spam you with too much, but there will be something that pops up that says, read the first few chapters of my book. And the secret is it's the entire book. You'll also get it emailed to you and also the link to listen to that audio, How to Survive Grief, that I talked about. That was the first thing that I recorded after my dad's passing.
Sandra, thank you so much for being here. It's really been a fabulous experience for all of the people that are listening and watching right now. So I so appreciate that. And also to all of you that are listening and watching, thank you so much for joining us here. Please share your comments because I know that both of us would love to hear what you have to say, what your thoughts are on some of the things that we talked about. If you liked what you saw, please give it a like, a thumbs up. We appreciate that too. Share it with a friend and also subscribe. So once again, Sandra, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it with me and my audience.
Oh, thank you, Heather. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.